Okay.
Okay, we are on X.
We are on YouTube as well. Folks, if you can hear us, please drop a little message in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. This is the first time we're doing a live on a Tuesday morning if you're in North America. I'm currently in Gothenburg, Sweden. Lovely place here. Lots of great solidarity with Palestine. I believe they had the longest student encampment on the premises of the University of Gothenburg campus. Was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday named Eric. I think he said it was like over 180 days. Forgot the exact number. The camp got dismantled around a month or so ago. And just the images that they've shown, the great solidarity over here in Gothenburg is truly inspiring. I also saw some great images yesterday. I don't feel like it's too safe for me to share them, of how they celebrated the ceasefire in Gaza. So truly remarkable to be here in great surrounding of people who've shown great solidarity with Palestine and who keep doing so until justice and victory for the Palestinian people. Dimitri, where are you tuning in from?
I'm in Athens, Greece today. Hello, everybody. I returned to Greece about 5 days ago. I'll be in the Eastern Mediterranean for the next couple of months. Rami and I are looking anxiously for ways to get into Gaza. This is proving to be quite a challenge. There are other reasons why we're here, but because of the events, we thought it would be an amazing moment to get into the strip, but it's unclear at this stage whether we'll be able to do that. But we'll be talking today about the momentous events of the last week in Palestine.
And folks, just before we start, if you could share the live stream, click like, drop a comment, just to push the algorithm to increase our exposure and visibility so that more people could join us, and hopefully we could all learn from each other. So today on the agenda, there's two main topics that we want to talk about. Essentially, we're, I believe, 2.5 weeks or so from the beginning of the first phase of the ceasefire. There's been two prisoner swaps that have occurred. Over 300 Palestinians have been released from prison, from captivity, of course. And Palestinians on Monday were able to finally cross the Netzarim corridor and enter the northern part of Gaza. So we definitely want to discuss that and the meaning and symbolism behind this. And yesterday, the U.S. stock market woke up to a bombshell. The American invincibility in the technological sphere seems to have been pierced once again by Chinese technological developments. Their recent DeepSeek AI model seems to have shattered any form of AI models built in the United States. With a lot less resources, tools, and heavy sanctions, they were still able to produce amazing results. So we definitely want to talk about that. But just before we start, we also wanted to give a shout out and show our complete love and solidarity with Ali Abunimah, who was held captive in Switzerland almost twice. So the first time at the airport, he was detained briefly for a couple of hours. And a few days later, when he was about to enter an event that he was supposed to speak at, Swiss police took him into an unmarked van and held him captive for 2 days. Ali Abunimah has showed great, inspiring strength by refusing all meals and food and drinks that were offered to him, only lived off of water for 2 days in order to denounce the censorship and oppression to journalism and people who've shown solidarity with Palestinians from the Swiss police. Switzerland is seen as this democratic space. It's neutral, and it's put on a pedestal of being a place of human rights. Yet we know that human rights don't apply to everyone, especially not people who fight against Western imperialism and genocide. Right? Let's leave it at that. So all of our thoughts are with Ali Abunimah. He's inspired definitely me to enter this field of journalism. He's pretty much my strongest source when it comes to reading about Palestine. He published the Lobby USA documentary when Al Jazeera was too scared to publish it. So truly a respected figure in the world of Palestine. So yes, all of our love and support to Ali Abunimah, and may he keep carrying the fight and inspiring more of us to take a stand on Palestine. Dimitri, did I forget anything?
Just for those who don't know the name, I imagine most of our audience will, but Ali is the founder and editor-in-chief of Electronic Intifada, an online source of information on the Palestinian struggle. He's based in the United States. He's been the editor-in-chief of Electronic Intifada for as long as I can remember, and I've interviewed him a couple of times on this program. And as I've said before, I think that Ali and his team, it's not just Ali, he has an extraordinary group of people around him, like Nora Barrows-Friedman and John Elmer and Asa Winstanley, and he has people on the ground in Palestine. I think that they do, no one does finer reporting on the subject of the Palestinian struggle than Electronic Intifada, and I think that's why he's been targeted. This is not the first time he's been targeted. He was targeted also by the German government, effectively barred from speaking there because he's such a powerful and compelling voice, and everything that he says is amply supported by carefully assembled evidence. They're very careful at Electronic Intifada. They do their homework, and I think that this is why we are seeing attempts to silence him and his team. And by the way, the British government went after one of his team members, Asa Winstanley, a couple of months ago. I believe they raided his home, if I recall correctly, Rami, under this draconian law, the Terrorism Act. He wasn't imprisoned or charged with anything, but they're clearly Western governments, European governments, are going after Electronic Intifada in any way they can to try to silence them. But we're very gratified that he's been freed. And we will continue to support in any way we can their extraordinary work.
Now, Dimitri, this week I happened to be, well, just before arriving in Gothenburg earlier yesterday, I was in Belgium where there was the National March of Solidarity with Palestine. It was attended by maybe around 50,000 people or so. I joined the Samidoun Brigade or contingent of the protest. And there were around 200 people or so over there. Samidoun has received lots of repression in Belgium as well. Dimitri, I feel like that's one of the subjects we speak the most on our live stream these days, is covering all the cases of journalistic mistreatment happening in the West. So I had the pleasure of meeting Mohammed Khatib and Abdullah from Samidoun, who are basically under surveillance by the Belgian state, who are restricting their right to movement. They're also banned from even entering Switzerland, the Netherlands, and possibly France. So I'm hoping to publish a report on that as well. I'm not as quick as you are, Dimitri, at publishing, but I'll get there. And Dimitri, where have you been lately? What have you done this past week?
Well, I have a humble abode in outside of Kalamata up in the mountain. So I spend as much time there as I can. I'm based in Montreal, but that's an important base for me as well, Kalamata. So that's where I've been the last few days. I was reopening my my home for the winter. And as I said, I don't plan to spend the next 2 months entirely in Kalamata because I really would like to get to West Asia. If we can't get into Gaza, Rami, I will do what I can, and hopefully you'll be able to join me to get into South Lebanon again, and perhaps other other areas of the region with these fast-moving and historic developments that are happening every day.
Now, Dimitri, you also published a report with Alan Mizrahi. I believe that was after our last live stream.
Yes.
And was there another on? I believe tomorrow you might be publishing something with Leith. Okay, so maybe we could just start. Yeah, go on, Dimitri.
Yeah, so just people should check out the Ali Mizrahi is an author and activist, an Arab Jewish author and activist who left Israel because of the genocide, and I interviewed him for about an hour, and he talked about his evolution from Zionist to anti-Zionist, and that discussion has gotten a very positive reaction. The comments on the video have been wonderful. A lot of admiration for Alon and his humanity and his intellectual integrity. But yeah, we'll be doing interviews this week with Leith Maroof. Also, we'll have Jose Luis Granados Sella. We've had him on before to talk about all of these tariff threats against Latin America, and now people being deported directly to Latin American companies by the Trump administration. And then we're going to have a new guest by the name of Alex Crenier. I'll be interviewing him on Friday to talk about he's comes from the investment world, but has really keen insights into geopolitics. So we have a busy week ahead of us.
So, Dimitri, I think we could just start by talking about the recent ceasefire. We spoke a lot about this in our previous live stream, but just to revisit this, the ceasefire agreement was divided into 3 phases. It took effect on January 19th, 2025, and in the first phase, it consisted of releasing the civilian, what Israel call hostages, right? The civilian hostages, as they call, in exchange for our own Palestinian held in captivity as well. So the first stage consisted, I believe, of the female civilians. That was the exchange that happened last week. In exchange, I believe we received 90 Palestinian female civilians as well. And then yesterday, the authority in Gaza was able to exchange 1 prisoner in order to open up Netzarim corridor to let the Palestinians enter the northern part of Gaza. And there were 4 female soldiers as well that were exchanged on Sunday, which I believe was for around 200 more Palestinians. Mm-hmm. So the first phase, once all of the so-called civilian prisoners are exchanged, it will bring us closer to the second stage of the ceasefire, which will now be the male soldiers that will then be exchanged for more Palestinians, of course. And then the third phase would be related to the reconstruction plan and what Israel calls the future of Gaza. Now, there's no guarantee that the first phase will actually be implemented or completed, and even less so for the second and third phase. So in short summary, that's what's detailed as being the 3 stages of the ceasefire. Now,
one detail we should add, Rami, is on the 16th day, which I think is going to be in a few days' time, they're supposed to commence negotiations about the second phase. Mm-hmm. So I think we'll pretty quickly form a view get some information about what the prospects are for the second phase actually going into effect. But we'll get into this some more during our discussion. If its government wants to see all of these prisoners of war, the soldiers, male and female, who are in the custody of Hamas released, they are going to have to see the second phase through to completion. And I think right now there's immense pressure. There has been considerable pressure, but now the pressure probably is higher than it's ever been within Israel for the government to ensure the release of all hostages, what they call hostages. The soldiers, of course, are not hostages. They're prisoners of war.
So, Dimitri, do you want to start talking about the Palestinians being able to return to the north?
Well, why don't we go with the prisoner swap first, Rami? So, as Rami mentioned, this past weekend, 4 female soldiers were freed by Hamas. And I think we should start by sharing with our audience a video, which I understand was produced by Hamas, of this ceremony. It was quite ceremonial, and then we'll comment upon it. But why don't we pull that up first? Video 1, Rami, and
السلام عليكم مرحبا. شكرا لكتاب القسام على كل المعاملة الكويسة. شكرا للأكل والشرب والملابس. شكرا للشباب اللي كانوا يحفظوا علينا ودير بالو علينا من كاسف. وإن شاء الله يكون الكل يوم سعيد وأحسن يوم وكلنا نكون بخير.
يوم 25/1/25.
So these are the 4 female soldiers who were released. I believe, were they speaking Arabic, Rami? I believe they were.
Dimitri, they were speaking a better Arabic than I can.
Wow. Quite interesting. Yeah, let's continue. So here they are being given gifts. We can't see who's giving the gifts, but I believe that's probably one of the soldiers, the Hamas fighters. So I just want to draw your attention. I'll comment upon this when the video is finished, but look at all of these fighters in uniform. The number of them is quite striking. Please go ahead, Rami. Now they're going to go up on the stage and they have to sign some documentation. You can stop right there. Sorry. Now, if you look closely, everybody, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that there is a banner that has been erected on the podium behind the desk where everyone's going to sit down to sign the paperwork. I think those are officials of the Red Cross who are, also signing the paperwork. And it's written, there's language in both English and Arabic. And at the top, it says, Palestine, the victory of the oppressed people versus the Nazi Zionism. And then underneath it says, again in English, Gaza is the graveyard of the criminal Zionists. Now watch what happens. Here are the soldiers, the Israeli soldiers in uniform. Those are Israeli military uniforms. Pause it there. Now, we'll come back to this, but this is being watched, these images, by Israelis. So you have 4 Israeli soldiers who appear to be in good health. The Times of Israel commented that those were the words the Times of Israel used when it described this scene, that they appear to be in good health, smiling and waving. And they're doing that in front of a banner which refers to Zionism as a Nazi ideology and Gaza as the graveyard of the Zionists. It's really an extraordinary scene. Something I think few, if any of us anticipated. Please go ahead, Rami.
Just a quick comment, because you mentioned they're in uniform. This is, I believe, under the conventions of war, right? Soldiers held in captivity have the right to stay in military uniform, and this is an acknowledgement that the resistance in Gaza is actually abiding by their obligations as people that are keeping prisoners of war under their control. Do you have any comments on that, Dimitri?
No, I think that's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
في اشتباك موتى في الطعام.
Thank you, Rami. Now, we were told that Hamas was largely destroyed. They didn't claim that it was completely destroyed, but largely destroyed. You saw there, certainly dozens, if not hundreds, of Hamas fighters in uniform, looking quite professional in their uniform. And by the way, a number of them, according to military experts, appeared to be carrying the latest Israeli automatic weapons, the Tavor rifles. Where they got them is an interesting question. They might have seized them on October 7th, or they might have seized them from soldiers in the subsequent combat that occurred inside the Gaza Strip. But one cannot watch this video and come away with the impression that Hamas is destroyed or that it isn't in control of the Gaza Strip. This certainly very powerfully conveys the impression that it remains a cohesive, disciplined military force, and that it is in control of the Strip. Now, I'm giving you my immediate reaction, but I think even more instructive is the reaction to this development or these developments of somebody by the name of Daniel Levy. And Daniel Levy is a British Israeli analyst and former advisor to the Israeli government, an eloquent, knowledgeable man, an expert in West Asian affairs, who has been outspoken in his criticism of the Israeli government's conduct over the past several years, particularly during the genocide. And he was interviewed on Middle East Eye. And we're going to show you a clip from his interview in a moment, but just so you understand, what he's commenting on in this clip is the impact of the release of the first three captives by Hamas. So this was the commentary about to see were before what you just saw, which is the second swap involving 4 female Israeli soldiers. So why don't we play video 2?
Bring this all to the
of our audience.
Israelis see those images. I think it's really hard, by the way, for people to wrap their heads around the extent to which those Israelis who have been held in Gaza all this time have kind of taken up residence in the minds of so much of the Israeli population. This has been, it's been so relentless. The stories of the families, those who've gone out to protest, those who haven't, those who've been very prevalent in the media. So one cannot underestimate the impact on the Israeli public psyche of the release, the initial 3 who were released. And of course, everyone therefore saw those images. They saw the images of the Al-Qassam brigades escorting the 3. They've been told Al-Qassam defeated. They've been told the public has turned against them. They've been told so many things. And then they saw those images. Now, in this kind of a struggle between, where there's such asymmetry, right? Between an occupying army, armed and aided by the most powerful military in the world, the US, a nuclear-armed state, Israel. In a struggle between that and a resistance movement, we were told Yeah, the problem with the total victory narrative is all it would take is one guy with just an arm remaining to raise two fingers in victory, and the Israeli we didn't see one guy with two fingers on an arm remaining. Mm-hmm. We saw a very powerful display, and Israelis saw that.
Indeed, it was a very powerful display, and that was just the first three. I would be interested to know what Daniel Levy's thoughts are after the second powerful display, which was even more, I think, striking, the one that you just saw. So the impact of this on, as Daniel Levy put it, the Israeli psyche, I think cannot be overstated. There were already, before the prisoner swaps, you could find in the Israeli press, particularly the Hebrew language Israeli press, not so much the English language Israeli press, comments about how the ceasefire constituted a defeat and Israel had been defeated for the first time in its history. With these two swaps and what people saw within Israel, there has to be an overwhelming sentiment, I would imagine, really of military shame. I mean, with all of the weapons at its disposal and all of the destruction that Israel, backed by the full force and fury of the United States, visited upon the Gaza Strip, for the resistance groups to be in this good a condition and to have this level of control and this level of discipline is mind-blowing. It's just simply mind-blowing. Whatever you may think of Hamas, I'm going to say this again. I've said it before. I think what we have witnessed over the past 15 months in all of Palestine, not just in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, is the greatest act of collective resistance of our lifetimes, and one of the greatest acts of collective resistance in human history. I bow at the feet of the Palestinian people, not just militants. This is also very much a civilian resistance. Every person in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank who has survived this reign of terror, these monstrosities, these Western-backed crimes against humanity every single day, we should bow at their feet in honor of their dignity, their steadfastness, and their just immense courage. So Rami, I'm curious what you felt as a Palestinian when you saw these images of these prisoner swaps.
Well, there's two kinds of reactions that we're seeing, right? So the first one is seeing these 4 Israeli soldiers coming out of their imprisonment, smiling, not necessarily fearing their in some way their prison guards, right? The people that were holding them prisoners. And on the other hand, you see the Palestinians, who are, many of them, exiled from even coming to to go back to their families in the West Bank or Gaza, who are now thrown into exile into Egypt and other Arab countries that we're still not very aware of where they're going to be. People are saying Tunisia, Algeria, and beyond. So when I see this as a Palestinian, Bisan Wizard on Instagram had an amazing analysis, just comparing the joy in the eyes of these Israeli soldiers who were took captive on October 7th during the military operation, and these prisoners in Palestine, the Palestinian prisoners that spent 20, 30, 40 years in captivity, many of them in solitary confinement, leaving prison with complete, almost a mixture of joy and fear. Again, I was with Samidoun, meeting people from Samidoun back in Brussels, Belgium. This is a prisoner advocacy group. And to see us as Palestinians, knowing that so many Palestinians we have over 10,000 Palestinians in prison camps in 1948 Palestine. Many of them have never been in touch with their family over the term of their captivity. Being able to leave these prisons, and in many cases not even being able to come back to Palestine and being forced into another form of exile, right? Being in prison in 1948 Palestine is a prison sentence, but even getting exiled outside of Palestine is another different form of prison sentence that is given up to them. So there's a lot of, it's inspiring to see them leave prison, but also it breaks my heart to note that there are so many more of them that are in prison and that maybe they will not be able to leave. And many of them are in solitary confinement. So it's a mix of joy and reminds us that as Palestinians, the two most important aspects of Palestinian identity is honoring the prisoners and honoring the martyrs. But yes, these images bring in a mix of joy, happiness, and sadness to see the struggle of the Palestinians. And the fight carries on until every single Palestinian prisoner is freed. Yeah.
So let's see, equally, if not more momentous, the events of yesterday, the return on foot of what was probably hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the southern part of the strip up the Netzarim corridor, which was basically Death Alley over the course of this genocide, to northern Gaza. So we're going to show you a clip from a report by Al Jazeera. And I just want to say
they have waited for this day.
Quite interestingly, yesterday, the day on which these events occurred, what we're about to show you, was the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, the Auschwitz death camp by the Soviet Red Army. So on this very day, the world witnessed the following.
For so very long, forcibly displaced for 15 months, they have lost virtually everything. Tens of thousands now walking north, making their way back to whatever is left of their homes.
We want to see our family. I want to see my mum and dad. We haven't seen them for 15 months. It's a long time. We're going now.
I haven't seen my family for a year and a half. I want to go back and see them. I've been waiting for 3 days to go to my parents. We are tired. I want to go to Gaza. We're not coming back here.
Moments of joy, despite the hell they have suffered being far from over. They know there is very little to return to. But like a river of people, they carry what few belongings they have left. The buildings, the homes, the businesses that once stood here, now ruins in a destroyed wasteland. In Gaza City, almost nothing remains inhabitable.
Yes. Thank you. Could you just go back up a little bit? This is what they're going back to. I can't for the life of me imagine the courage and strength it requires to be happy, to rejoice at returning to this. That's the strength of character that we're talking about here.
In Brussels, I met a gentleman named Abdullah, who is from Gaza, from Khan Yunis. And when I told him we're planning on going to Gaza, what he told me is, you're more than welcome to stay at mine in Khan Yunis. I was like, oh, the Israelis didn't destroy your house. They're like, no, it's destroyed, but you can stay in a tent on my land. So this just shows a bit about how, for Palestinians, the notion of a house is more than the physical construct of what a house is. It's going back to this area that you call home, the land that you belong to, where your roots are tied to. So this is an image of complete destruction, but this is also a symbol of joy, of people coming back to their rightful homes. And in many cases, our homes are also back in 1948 Palestine, which we still keep the key to our houses too. So a lot of these people in Gaza are actually from surrounding areas in 1948 Palestine, whether it's Ashkelon, which we call Al-Mashdal, or some of them from Jaffa. So this is, I mean, I'm going to talk about this later on, but what we see, what some people might see here is destruction, but Palestinians see this concept of return, al-awda.
Right.
In Gaza City, almost nothing remains inhabitable. But for the first time since the war began, there is a sense of happiness and hope.
So we can take down the video now. This is a bit long, so we don't need to show the whole thing. And you can find images all over social media, including some, in the interest of time, we're not going to show them, but some children who are reciting en route to northern Gaza, the devastation of northern Gaza, little children reciting revolutionary poetry, as though they're reading from a script, but they're not. It's so emblazoned in their memory that they don't need a script. Really, I'm just speechless. Now, somebody who isn't speechless and probably never has been speechless his entire damn life is Donald Trump. Donald Trump can't seem to keep his damn mouth shut. And a couple of days ago, as I commented in my latest rant of the week over the weekend on Air Force One, began pontificating about what he's going to do with the people of Gaza, northern Gaza in particular. This was before the extraordinary scenes of yesterday. He gave these comments to the media on Air Force One, I think it was 2 days ago. And he said that he was going to ask the King of Jordan and the Egyptian president, both of whom really are dictators for all intents and purposes, to take in 1.5 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. As I asked in my rant of the week, what does he intend to do with the other 800,000? Actually, it's not 800,000 now. It was 2.3 million in total, approximately, before the genocide began. Who knows the number of killed? Definitely in excess of 50,000, could be in excess of 200,000. We'll one day have a better sense of the scale of the carnage. But in any event, the number Trump threw out was 1.5 million. Why not, 2 million or more? I don't know. That obviously is a flagrant call to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip. And in fact, he used the phrase clean out as though this was, like a box of dirty laundry or your toilet bowl. We're going to clean out Gaza. Now, fortunately, but not surprisingly, both autocrats of Egypt and Jordan have responded. And as they have said repeatedly, because it wasn't just Trump who was inclined to try this criminal move, but the Biden administration very early on in the genocide, Antony Blinken, the war criminal, was, openly pontificating about the same thing. And there has never been a point in time when the autocrats of Egypt and Jordan have publicly, at any rate, indicated their willingness to take in any of these people. And they've said flatly, that's not going to happen. If they were insane enough and psychopathic enough to accede to this request from Trump, I think myself, there would likely be an absolute explosion of anger throughout West Asia. That would be a bridge too far for many people. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the former Egyptian president Anwar Sadat, after he did a peace deal with Israel decades ago, was assassinated in open air. And I have every confidence that both the King of Jordan and the dictator of Egypt are keenly aware of that history, not to mention that it would be an immense burden. And another thing that would undoubtedly concern them is if they took in these Palestinians from Gaza, no sane person at this stage would think they're going to stop fighting to get their country back. I mean, the level of determination they have is otherworldly. So they would probably be launching attacks on the genocidal entity from Egypt and Jordan. They're not just going to quietly, pass into the night. And that would, of course, cause Israel to attack the territory of Egypt and Jordan and use the attacks emanating from those countries on the territory of Israel as a pretext to send their forces into Egypt and Jordan. So there are plenty of reasons why I believe it's extremely unlikely that either Sisi or Hussein are going to take in any of the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip. And the last thing I want to say is, this was, this too, the return of these tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from southern Gaza to northern Gaza yesterday, and the process is ongoing. They're still moving northward. This blows to bits any claim that Israel has secure control over the northern part of the Gaza Strip, and that it can be prepared at some point in the reasonably near future for settlement by the many fanatical Israeli settlers who have been talking about setting up home in stolen land in northern Gaza. What is Israel going to do now? Are they going to send their forces back in again? As we've covered on a previous program, in the last week before the ceasefire, 15 Israeli soldiers were killed in northern Gaza. After we had been told, and many more were wounded, after we had been told repeatedly that northern Gaza had been cleared of resistance fighters. Now you have hundreds of thousands of Palestinians returning there. So I'm not going to make any predictions about whether this genocide is going to resume, but I certainly feel as though, in light of these events, the prospect of that happening has gone down considerably. The other thing is that Netanyahu apparently is suffering from quite ill health. Apparently he's had a pacemaker installed, and he's being monitored carefully. He may have prostate cancer. There's severe schisms in his family. Apparently there are reports that there was a violent altercation between Netanyahu and his son, who has been hiding out in Miami throughout this genocide, while other young Israelis were putting their lives on the line for the genocidal entity. So the arch war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu is in a world of pain. He was actually in court yesterday for his corruption trial. I believe he was pleading with the judge because of his ill health, not to force him to proceed at this time. Personally, everybody says don't count Netanyahu out, never count him out. Well, I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm counting him out. I think Netanyahu is probably done as a doornail, and I see very little prospect for this man remaining in power much longer, for all of the reasons I've cited, because of the immense dissatisfaction with his rule, because of his corruption, because of his ill health, because of the strategic defeat Israel has suffered. Now, that doesn't mean, if I turn out to be correct about this, that he does depart the scene politically soon. Doesn't mean that he'll be replaced by somebody who's determined to do a genuine peace with the Palestinian people. Hard to see who in the Israeli political elite might be open to that possibility, but it nonetheless would be a welcome, I think, development in the mind of any person of conscience that Netanyahu mercifully ends his political career. Rami, any thoughts about this?
The banner behind the signing ceremony, right, that we saw in Gaza on Sunday, we spoke about what it said in English. It said that Gaza is the graveyard of the Nazi Zionists. So Netanyahu, Yair Lapid, whoever they call moderate and liberal, are different faces of the same evil, which is Zionism. So, and this is one criticism that I have a lot about more liberal movements that are in the pro-Palestine camp, is that they often think that Netanyahu is the problem. Netanyahu is the problem for maybe people that have an issue with corruption, because that seems to be what Israeli courts are indicting him on. But we know that the labor movement in 1948 Palestine has started as much wars, if not more, than the Likud movement. I kind of see it as a good cop, bad cop side of a corrupted movement and a state that is a fascist Nazi state. So So yes, I'm very wary of anyone beyond Netanyahu. But again, the people in Gaza know that the enemy is not Netanyahu. The enemy is Zionism and everyone that encompasses with. But also related to Trump, he's talking about how Palestinians have to leave Gaza, but the tides have turned. Now it's about what inspires me of seeing the Palestinians from Gaza who came from the south back home to the north is that we are now coming closer to imposing our right of return that is guaranteed by UN resolutions. This was Israel's best chance to ethnically cleanse Gaza, to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians, and they failed. They failed in the north. Even when all the Palestinians that you saw that left the north and stayed in the south, there were also many Palestinians that stayed north the whole time. So I think these Zionist leaders need to rethink about what their strategy will be to get rid of us Palestinians, because if they were not able to do so within a genocide, they need to have a different approach. And in some way, that approach, what I expect them is to surrender to the idea that they will never get rid of Palestinians. So they could choose what to do from there, either live in a peaceful one-state solution where Palestinians are compensated and allowed to return, or they're more than welcome to leave Palestine.
Yeah.
And I just want to emphasize that the right of return is the center of the Palestinian cause. And every single Palestinian that you'll ever meet has the key to their homeland, the key to their houses that they were exiled from. And when we've played videos, Dimitri, of Palestinians crossing by foot through the Netzarim corridor back home. And these are the same images, but just switched sides in 1948 when Palestinians were forced at gunpoint to leave their houses by foot into Lebanon, into the West Bank, into Jordan and Egypt. So these images spark a sense of, it warms my heart, gives me goosebumps to see the tides are turning, and now we're talking about return, right? Because there's no victory for the Palestinians without return. And these Palestinians are going back to their homes in north of Gaza, which are the same beaches and pieces of real estate that Jared Kushner and Trump were praising as being great places to open up hotels and beach clubs in Gaza under these so-called where they were advertising in synagogues in North America and Canada, right? These conferences to sell real estate in Gaza, right? Which there has been heavy protests. So this is a huge blow to the Zionists, to the colonizers. We're going back to our homes and what they've called prime real estate and beach houses and whatnot. And these images resonate as well when we saw the Lebanese people back in 2002 when they were able to liberate the south of Lebanon and come back to their homes, or even in 2024 when the Lebanese people who left their homes south of the Litani River, right, and they all started coming back to their homes, as we've been seeing in the past few weeks. So these images of return are inspiring, to say the very least. And then additionally, as Palestinians, we're also all we grew up often with this image over here of a caricature of a man called Handala, which I have an image of over here. And this little character, as we see his back over here, the artist behind Handala said that the day that Palestinians will return, we will see what his face looks like. And I feel like we're getting closer and closer to getting to see Handala's face. And that would symbolize our victory as Palestinians in our return. Now, and to just finish off by talking about the prisoner swap, back in 2021, I believe, a group of 4 or so Palestinian captives from the Gilboa prison dug a hole with spoons from their prison cell and were able to escape for 3-4 days or so. I don't have the exact dates on hand because this is just from my memory. And the resistance in Gaza promised that every captive, every prisoner who was part of the Spoon Revolution, right? Who dug their way out of exile, of captivity, will be liberated in a prisoner's trade. And this is what we're seeing, is that on Sunday, I believe one of those prisoners who was part of the Spoon Revolution was part of the prisoner swap. So there's been a lot of these symbolic victories, and it's more than just symbolic victories. There's actual victories that have been appearing over the last days or so. So yes, definitely prisoners, not hostages, of course. So yeah, this is pretty much what I had to say about
Yeah, before we move on to the final subject of the live stream, I just want to add, we're not going to talk about it in any detail here, but I plan to get into this with Laith Marouf, who has been in South Lebanon over the last several days. There's been a similar phenomenon occurring in South Lebanon, where people who live in the southern border villages, who have been waiting to come back to their devastated communities near the Israeli border, basically started protesting. And because the Israeli forces were supposed to have completely evacuated from southern Lebanon by Sunday, and they decided to stay. And the Americans, who were supposed to be enforcing the ceasefire agreement, allowed them to do it. And the Lebanese army, the National Army, which is supposed to be taking control of South Lebanon, hasn't forced them out. So they just, peacefully, many of them bearing Hezbollah flags, but they were civilians, they weren't armed. They just walked into their villages, drove into their villages, and the Zionist entity's military forces killed 22 of them and wounded dozens of others. But there were also these extraordinary scenes of Lebanese returning to their homes over the weekend, which I'm going to get into in my discussion this week with Laith Marouf. So Rami, why don't we go to our final subject, which is the wild fall in the stock market yesterday as a result of a stunning announcement by a little Chinese company that up until yesterday, I think almost nobody knew about.
Yes, absolutely. Dimitri, do you want me to start off with that, or?
Well, why don't I can just briefly say, you mean about the stock market?
Yes.
Yeah. Just by way of background, the tech stocks have been on a tear for the last couple of years, and it's been based on a lot of I think it's hype, around AI. That AI was going to become this extraordinary new thing that was going to make gobs of money for the tech industry, and a lot of money pouring into companies that are developing AI. The most important of which is a company called NVIDIA. NVIDIA, its market capitalization grew so much during this period that it became the largest company in the world, even bigger than Apple. And yesterday, when news came out about a low energy consuming AI product developed by a Chinese company called DeepSeek, the market capitalization of NVIDIA fell by $600 billion in one day. $600 billion in one day. And it went from being the largest company in the world to being the second largest company in the world, because Apple. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Here, this is like a little indicator of the different industries that are publicly traded. As you see, the general term for, in some way, kind of these AI companies would kind of fit within these two boxes over here, which is like software infrastructure and semiconductors. Semiconductors are more or less the hardware-related companies that are invested in building the infrastructure for what we should call like AI to work. NVIDIA, which started off as a GPU company, right? They would basically build graphic cards, which is the most efficient way of maybe processing information or so. This is a company that was valued at maybe $4 trillion and lost nearly 20% at its highest point, or at its lowest point on the trading day yesterday. that represented around $600 billion lost in one day. And then we look at TSM, which is Taiwan Semiconductors. That's the kind of the manufacturing hub for these chips. They have contracts with NVIDIA. That lost 14%. And when we look at Microsoft, the company that more or less has some agreement, some level of ownership in OpenAI, lost 3%. And you've mentioned something about DeepSeek being able to process or to release its AI model requiring a lot less energy. Even the energy companies traded on the stock market lost significant market cap or value on the stock market yesterday. Vistra, which is a company that provides energy to data centers and these large AI companies, lost 30% yesterday on the stock market. So
right. AI is just, for people who don't know, is very energy intensive, consumes huge amounts of electricity.
Well, apparently not for DeepSeek, because it was able to it was able to using NVIDIA chips from the year 2020, right? 5-year-old chips, because the United States has restrictions on the technologies that certain countries can use, right? So the United States,
it's more they banned the more advanced NVIDIA chips from being sold to China, right?
Exactly. So there's this map over here about how China wants to, the United States wants to hoard the technological lead over the rest of the world. So when you look at this map over here, let me see if I could zoom in from my own screen. So this is the United States and Canada. And then like very limited Western countries here. You see like Finland, Norway, Sweden, France, Spain, Germany, Italy, UK. These are the countries that have unrestricted imports. So they could buy any NVIDIA chip or any chip where there's no restrictions on them. But when you look at this map over here, you also notice that somewhat friendly countries to the West are also restricted from buying these American products, right? These American advanced AI chips, right? So you look at Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary.
Why is that, Rami?
Because the United States truly wants to keep its edge. Maybe there's some fear of these chips being funneled over to Russia and China, right? Because maybe they cannot be trusted. But at the end of the day, America has put sanctions on some of their own allies and their enemies, of course. I mean, in this case, Russia and China, to not get access to the most developed US technology. But the problem is that, and we've known this forever, is that sanctions essentially don't work, and especially not for developed industrialized countries such as Russia and China, because these sanctions are in some way pushing China to develop homegrown solutions. So because they were not allowed to use NVIDIA chips or the most advanced NVIDIA chips, Huawei is now producing their own equivalent to compete with NVIDIA. So in some way, the United States is inviting Chinese competition. And what we've learned with DeepSeek's release, which I'll show a bit how it compares to the other American solutions, it's miles ahead of American technologies, despite the restrictions. So America is actually shooting itself in the foot by sanctioning China and Russia especially China at least, on the AI race. So I just wanted to share with you this image over here. Just to maybe like kind of emphasize a bit what is the what's it called again? Sorry, just can't really multitask. How DeepSeek kind of compares in the AI world. There's kind of 3 models. Oh, there used to be like 2, but there's 3 models that are the most competitive. There's Cloud over here, which is owned by Anthropic, and GPT, that is managed by OpenAI, which has ties to Microsoft. Then we have Llama, that is owned by Meta. And the bold letters that you see here is pretty much the one that's rank the highest on some score that is, I believe, out of 100. So when you look at generating content in English, and these are benchmarks that are a bit difficult for me. I'm not the biggest specialist in these specific benchmarks over here, but what you could definitely see is that DeepSeek is outperforming Cloud and GPT 4.0 on pretty much all of these different benchmarks. And when we look at code, which is the ability to generate code that could be that could be implemented and processed by computers, the DeepSeek model is outperforming its competitors. Now, keep in mind that DeepSeek has a team of less than 200 people, an investment of $10 million, and has only been around for 2 years. In comparison, OpenAI has been around for 10 years with 4,500 employees and has raised $6 billion and has access to the newest chips, has access to all the contracts it wants. It has Microsoft's backing. And in 2 years, this is what a private company based out of China was able to do, despite the heavy sanctions, despite its lack of access to the best hardware out there. Now, there's definitely challenges that DeepSeek could expect. America is going to do whatever it can to stop Chinese, to remove the competitive aspect of China in the AI race. They will most likely fail, but it already started. They're demonizing DeepSeek by saying that if you search Tiananmen Square massacre on DeepSeek, it won't give you an answer. But similarly, if you ask ChatGPT if there's a genocide in Gaza, you'll probably get a sillier response. So whenever they're criticizing the bias of DeepSeek and these, I mean, if you want to really talk about the Tiananmen massacre, which started off when protesters started targeting Chinese soldiers, and there is probably a bias on DeepSeek's side in tackling this issue, but you cannot compare the moral indifference in not being able to recognize a genocide that no less than 100,000 people were killed from. So when it comes to the issues that matters, we could definitely see that DeepSeek is much more efficient. Now, the United States will probably have some level of protectionism by not letting DeepSeek be used for government employees or its military and all of its different agencies. So, but yeah. My biggest concern here is that there's like different levels to the race for AI. We're currently in between. There's a field called generative AI, which is the ability to generate content, which is the ability to produce marketing, to generate answers to questions. But there's another race coming after generative AI, which is agentic AI, which is the ability to proactively answer concerns of users. So that could be like customer agents bots. Like some people call it patient care as well. NVIDIA did a whole presentation about this at their CES keynote speech. And well, what we're noticing is that if China or the Chinese tech space definitely won the race to generative AI, we could only imagine that the future AI races and the future technology races, they will also win them. So whether it is the next upcoming one, which is agentic AI, we could only anticipate that there's someone in China working heavily in stealth mode that is going to outperform anything we think is leading right now. And then similarly after agentic AI, it seems like the race is going to be for robotic AI. So it's going to be building physical robots that are able to solve physical solutions for problems, for individuals. So my question here is that over the last 3-4 years, we had the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has shown us that America doesn't have the best weapons in the world, as they made us believe. As soon as they were stuck in a war with a even playing member, right? Russia. We've seen that Russian weapons are just as strong, if not stronger, in many cases. We know that with the genocide happening in Gaza, the this facade of Western moral superiority has also been shattered. And more recently, we noticed that America's facade of technological advancement and development and pioneering has also been crushed by China. Now, there's this thing called American exceptionalism, which tells us that America could invade Iraq for the greater good of humanity because it will bring us closer to having democracy around the world and allow us to develop our industries and all live more peacefully and live more comfortably in the West. Now, we've known that their army is bad, their weapons are weak, their technology is shit, and their morality has been exposed, right, in Gaza and Vietnam and beyond. So if they're going to destroy the rest of the world, at least be good at something, and they're clearly not doing anything good in the whole technological space. So the DeepSeek victory over the United States is showing us truly what are the how far we've gone in the West, and how that gap is getting bigger between us and China. And just to end this, BYD, which is in North America, we most likely don't really know them, but it's an electric car company. It's the biggest producer of electric cars in the world. They've recently built a car under $15,000. Even with 100% tariffs that we have in North America, it is still the cheapest electric car in the world.
Wow. And it probably has far greater range than any Western-made EV.
So this illusion of American exceptionalism is completely shattered.
Yeah. It's amazing, Rami. You know, it's like wherever we look, we see Western power in decline. And for those of us who live in the West, as we do, the most distressing thing about it is there seems to be nobody at the helm who has a serious idea about how to arrest that decline. The people who are running the show become increasingly desperate, increasingly depraved in their behavior, and are utterly either unconscious or indifferent to how their behavior is perceived by people in the non-Western world. In any case, one other thing I just want to, before we go to the Q&A, Rami, just ask you to comment upon. The founder of DeepSeek, Yang Wenfeng, reportedly told the Chinese media that, quote, AI should be affordable and accessible to everyone, close quote. Do you think this is a philosophy that's shared by the leaders in AI in the Western corporate community?
Oh, definitely not. I think societies are designed and engineered to become what they are, in a sense where if it costs us $6 billion to develop AI, as we've seen the way OpenAI has been doing it, it's because it's intended to be used only by the select few. And in China, they're democratizing it by making it cheap and affordable for everyone. And I've been reading a book called The East is Still Red by Carlos. I'll have to figure out the last name. But the whole purpose of the book is to talk about what is the Chinese, how is Chinese economy structured, and how is it built to work for the workers and for the working class people. And in 1978, there was this kind of liberalization of the economy that allowed foreign investments to develop industries in China. And it came as a caveat that any foreign investment had to allow the technology to then be used for the greater good of Chinese people. So we saw how Boeing opened up factories in China to produce planes, and that came at the expense of, let's just call it, cheaper labor in China. But that also opened the door for China to start producing planes, and now it's up there and outputting in its production of Chinese planes and beyond. So this investment that China has done over the 1970s, we're now seeing the fruits of that today. All of the factories that were implemented in China to take advantage of cheap labor, we are now seeing that China took the lead into owning these industries, competing with the West, and bringing costs down so that we could all benefit from it, right? So I believe OpenAI's plans, where you get access to the best features and at the enterprise level, you could look at a bill of around like $200-300 a month. the free plan on DeepSeek brings you just as much value, if not more.
Right.
So this is the vision. I mean, and this is, I'm not trying to praise China for the sake of praising them, but this is the reality on the ground, is that their products are accessible and tangible to everyone. When you go around the world, you'll see people who cannot afford, let's just say iPhones or whatever expensive products that we sell in the West. They all have Huawei's, Xiaomi, and other Chinese brands that are there to democratize commodities, goods that actually benefit society. And I think this is the way societies are designed. The West is based off of, United States is a society that was implemented off of slavery. It has evolved into its current form of imperialist capitalist society that is today. And on the other hand, China is a country that has uplifted over 1 billion people off of poverty, that is pioneering right now in AI. And I saw someone in the comments saying nuclear fusion in the aerospace industry. So if we really want to talk about who's a driver of good for humanity in the world, and I spoke earlier about American exceptionalism, there's really nothing exceptional about them when we see how China is really outperforming.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Shall we take some questions from our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me put that banner over here. So yes, please ask your questions. And if you could emphasize your question with like question marks at the beginning, or put a Q at the beginning, just so that it makes it easier for me, for the question to stand out, so I could share it on screen. Yeah.
While we're waiting there, I did see one question earlier on when we were talking about who might replace Netanyahu. And one of our audience members asked if it could be one of the more extreme fundamentalists, somebody like, I guess, Smotrich or Ben Gvir. My guess is that most Israelis, although they, by all accounts, you look at the polling data, support the dispossession and oppression of the Palestinian people and oppose the creation of a Palestinian state. I think there's a lot of fatigue, is my guess, with the more extreme elements of Netanyahu's cabinet, because they are, after all, the ones who demanded that this war go on in priority to recovering the hostages. And now that the hostages are coming back, and it's becoming quite obvious that 15 months of warfare did not destroy the resistance in Palestine. It did not destroy Hezbollah, as we're seeing this week in southern Lebanon. I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of love in Israeli society for the more extreme elements in Netanyahu's cabinet.
So yes, I'm registering the questions as they're coming in. So someone in the comments mentioned Carlos Martinez. Yes, Carlos Martinez is the author of the book that I was referring to. It's called The East is Still Red. I lost my copy on the plane, and I had just a few chapters left. So I need to, and I can't find it to buy. I can't find any bookshop here in Sweden or Belgium that had it for sale. So I need to figure something out there. Yeah, so we have a lot of questions coming in. I'm still just registering them. Okay, so let's start over here. So this is not really a question, more of a statement, but there's 2 question marks, so I'll take it. Ali's case makes sense for the creation of crowdsourced global legal advocacy network. Dimitri, you've been a bit involved in the defense of people who supported Palestine. Do you have any thoughts about that? Or, I'm sure there's something happening behind the scenes, or, yeah, any thoughts?
About crowdfunding?
Not necessarily, well, crowdsourced, right? So there's a way of coming to defense of people who are targeted for being in favor of Palestine or coming. Yeah.
Defense is in courts of law?
Yes. So the question is, Ali's case makes sense for the creation of crowdsourced global legal advocacy network.
Okay, I'm not sure what is meant by crowdsourced in this context, but what I will tell you is that in Canada we have, not me personally, but lawyers with whom I work, in a case we're pursuing against the Canadian government for violating the Genocide Convention. They've established a not-for-profit organization called the Legal Center for Palestine. And this is staffed with lawyers who work on a pro bono basis to defend the rights of Palestinian solidarity activists in this country in a whole bunch of contexts, including the employment context and in the free speech context, in the educational context, students who have had actions taken against them because of their support for Palestine. And LCP, Legal Center for Palestine, is growing rapidly, and there's every need for more lawyers to come on board. I think there's already a stable of lawyers made their services available to LCP, maybe 10, 15 of them. So this is also a model that's been adopted in the United States. I believe they're called the Palestine Legal Center. And they've been quite successful in defending the rights of Palestinian solidarity activists south of the border.
So we had another question here, which is from Daniel Drasnovich, who says, how are Palestinians going to rebuild?
Yeah. Well, that is a very complicated and difficult question because, there was a study done a few months ago. I think it was the United Nations said that if the pace of reconstruction is the same as it was after prior attacks on Gaza, which were obviously all of which were much less destructive, then it would take something like 80 years just to rebuild the destroyed houses, the destroyed infrastructure. Then it would take decades more to repair the damaged infrastructure. So in addition, the dud rate on the munitions that Israel has used was reported by one Israeli military official to be in the range of 10 to 15%. So that means there's a huge amount of unexploded munitions in the Gaza Strip. Then you have, problems with clean water. The electricity supply has been destroyed. The hospitals have been mostly destroyed. You're looking at a colossal undertaking. I mean, just removing the debris from Gaza would be a colossal undertaking. At the end of the day, however, these are problems that can be largely solved by money. And if you ask me, in a perfect world, the United States, Israel, Britain, and other Western states that have armed Israel would immediately be required to pony up several $100 billion. That's exactly what they should be required to do. And not only to repair the destruction in Gaza, but also to repair the destruction in the West Bank.
Yeah, and Dimitri, Israel said that it has the final right of approval for any reconstruction project as part of the third phase. And as we saw with the amount of aid being restricted during the genocide, we know that Israel will do whatever it can or whatever it takes to slow down the reconstruction of Gaza. Now, and I would like to say that it's not up to Israel to decide, but currently they're in control of Rafah crossing. They're at the border with Egypt, and in some way, as Gaza is occupied, it will be difficult to see how there would be any way to bypass Israel's control over the borders.
Yeah.
So
there are open spaces in Gaza, so I think you could you would need to erect short-term housing or structures not tents, but actual structures that can be assembled very quickly to house the population temporarily. But actually creating permanent housing sufficient to accommodate the population is going to take a huge amount of money and a significant amount of time. There's no doubt about that.
And also in Gaza back in 2014, there's an economy of people that use broken construction material to rebuild houses. Now, I'm no expert in that, but again, we've seen the Palestinians survive a genocide. There's I hate to talk about Palestinian resilience because it comes from necessity, and it's anyways, it just so there will be ways to rebuild Gaza, as Gaza has always been rebuilt despite the challenges, and this is the nature of the Palestinian people, of never surrendering and fighting all challenges that comes towards them. So yes, let me go through. So then there's this question from Luna C, who says, is a one-state solution the way forward?
Well, my own view is that this is a decision for the Palestinian people and those members of the Jewish Israeli population who are prepared to have a real negotiation with them about the solution. If the Palestinian people were, determined to, would be satisfied or preferred to have their own state separate and apart from the Israeli Jewish population, then I think we should respect their choice. But if you ask me as a practical matter, I don't think that the two-state solution is realizable any longer, because the extent of the settlements in the West Bank are simply too extensive. And getting those 700,000-800,000 Israeli settlers out of there, many of whom are armed and many of whom are fanatical, that is quite possibly an insurmountable challenge. So I think from a practical perspective, the best path forward is a one-state solution. Rami, what are your thoughts? Do you have a preference?
Well, I like to think that there's de facto already one state. There is an illusion that there's two states with the Palestinian Authority. So I think my question is that it's just giving Palestinians equal rights, which is obviously a lot to ask for an apartheid state and a genocidal state like Israel. I believe that the talk of a two-state solution is intended to waste time and to create friction into achieving justice and peace for the Palestinians. Honestly, there's indictments for Netanyahu and his war cabinet at the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. So I mean, I don't really believe the international community is actually serious at this point for coming with any settlements for the Palestinian people, whether it's a two-state or one state. The intention is to push the Palestinians out of Gaza, push the Palestinians out of Palestine. So that's just my belief, is that this whole talk of a two-state or a one-state solution is distracting us from the main problem, is that people don't actually want the solution. And as someone who identifies strongly with the main demands of the Palestinian people, which is the right of return and the right of free movement along our land, that resonates a lot with our intentions to have a one-state solution. We are Palestinians from Jaffa, and we will always be Palestinians from Jaffa. So a two-state solution has to be, any solution for the Palestinian people needs to take into consideration all Palestinians, that is the Palestinians of the diaspora and exile, the refugees, Palestinians in Gaza, West Bank, and even the Palestinians in 1948 Palestine. And I have trouble believing Palestinians will ever compromise for anything than their own homeland. And that doesn't mean that non-Palestinians cannot live among us. But I mean, we do not have a track record of kicking anyone out from our land, but the Israelis do.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we could move on to more questions. Dimitri, how many more questions do you think we could do?
Why don't we do 3?
Okay, so let's okay, so this is a let's stick to Palestine a bit longer. Dimitri, I'm not sure if you could answer this, but is there administrative detention terror laws in Canada that the Swiss used on Ali? Yeah.
Well, just let me, as a brief disclaimer, I'm not a criminal lawyer. My practice is in the area of civil claims, but you are permitted in Canada to a non-citizen, I'm sorry, can be incarcerated indefinitely in immigration detention based solely on administrative grounds. Excuse me. So if you're a non-citizen and you're deemed by the authorities or to be ineligible to be in Canada, yeah, they can indefinitely incarcerate you, which is appalling. In the criminal context, I don't believe I can't say for certain because, as I said, this is not my area of practice. But I don't believe that there is authority for doing that. You would have to bring charges relatively quickly under the Canadian Constitution, and give the person the opportunity to apply for bail, which may or may not be denied, may or may not be granted. And you also have to bring a trial within a reasonable period of time. There have been a number of criminal cases that have been dismissed in Canada under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms because the prosecution did not bring the matter to trial quickly enough. Excuse me.
Dimitri, is that your answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Luna C has asked us to give a shout out to British political prisoners Palestine Action and call for their immediate freedom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a question by Elaine Klein, who says, do you have any new thoughts, concerns, or optimism about Syria? What is happening or may happen with the developments over the past weeks? We haven't spoke about Syria over 2-3 weeks now.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Dimitri?
Well, I don't have any update to offer. But the last time I had a discussion with a guest about this was Kevork Almasian. I think our last discussion was about 2 weeks ago. And he indicated that he has seen a lot of evidence online, and he's hearing from his friends within Syria that there is a lot of, significant amounts of violence being directed by the militants of HTS and their allies against members of the Alawite community. And also there's been quite a lot of intimidation towards members of the Christian community in Syria. I saw some reports which suggested that the government, the so-called government, it's really just, it has no democratic legitimacy whatsoever. It doesn't control most of the territory. This HTS led regime now based in Damascus, that they are ridding the country of what many might regard as socialist structures or programs that were put in place early in the era of the Assad family. So they appear to be determined to turn Syria into a neoliberal economy. Not surprisingly, because those in power are effectively the proxies of the United States, and the United States, that's what it does. It takes countries of which it seizes control, whether directly or through proxies, and turns them into economic opportunities, business opportunities for their own corporatocracy, who then come in and pillage the place. So I think that sadly is the direction that Syria is taking. But the situation there remains very, very tenuous, very fragile, and explosive. So who knows how long the HTS crowd is going to remain in control of Damascus, and if they're displaced from power, then all bets are off as to what kind of an economic and social model Syria will have in the future.
And then we have one last question here from who says, can Judge Sebutinde continue to function as acting head of ICJ, or further with credible plagiarism accusations?
So, interesting question. Just by way of background, so people might not know, Judge Sebutinde is a member of the International Court of Justice from Uganda, and she dissented from the decision of the International Court of Justice in January of last year that it was plausible that Israel was committing genocide. And the only other judge who dissented was the Israeli judge, so which was quite an eye-opener. And she also dissented from a subsequent decision of the ICJ, I think the one that related to Rafah. And the opinion that she wrote, the dissenting opinion in the January decision that Israel was plausibly committing genocide. I haven't read the article, but apparently, I think it's from the Gray Zone. They are alleging, I haven't read the article, so I just want to be very clear about that. But I saw some commentary on it on social media that she plagiarized her reasons in that decision from some Israeli source. And so that's the background. A lot of people, I personally very concerned about Judge Sebutinde because of these things, and also because she's going to be the incoming president of the International Court of Justice. If in fact there are credible plagiarism allegations, they should be investigated, independently investigated by, I don't know if the ICJ has like an inspector general or something like that, but somebody should look at them. And if in fact she is found to have committed plagiarism, particularly while she was sitting on the court, then she should be obliged to resign. That is a firing offense. You know, to sit on the International Court of Justice, particularly in the role of the presidency, I don't know whether she's, I don't have enough information to say whether she committed plagiarism, but if she did, I think that that's a disqualification for sure.
So, folks, it was a great live stream. Dimitri, I believe we will keep doing them either Mondays or Tuesdays early in the morning for our folks in North America, at least while we're outside of Canada.
Yeah.
So, folks, it was a pleasure. We have an interview with Leith that is we're hoping to publish tomorrow or so. I need to get working on my report on the protest that happened in Brussels yesterday, or sorry, on Sunday. What else, Dimitri? Anything to prepare for?
No, that's it. We always appreciate your joining us for these conversations. And if you haven't subscribed to Reason to Resist, please do so. And if you appreciated this live stream, please don't forget to hit the like button before you sign off. Thank you very much, everybody. And we look forward to our next live stream.
See you, everyone.